February 23, 1945. Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima. Private First Class Tadashi. Yamamoto hunched in a concrete bunker, his hands shaking as he scribbled words that could get him executed if his officers found them. The Marines are not human. They refuse to die like other men. Everything our commanders told us about American weakness was a complete lie. He'd just witnessed something that shattered every assumption drilled into him during training. 6 Marines had charged his position through devastating machine gun fire. 3 went down. The others kept coming. When his squad unleashed grenades, 1 Marine absorbed the blast with his own body to protect his teammates, then kept fighting with catastrophic wounds until he physically couldn't hold his rifle anymore. The survivors took the position in minutes. 21,000 Japanese defenders occupied Iwo Jima, dug into 11 miles of tunnels and fortifications. They'd been promised they faced soft American troops who'd crumble under pressure. What they encountered instead would demolish every military assessment the Imperial Japanese Army had ever made about their enemies. This is the untold story of why Japanese soldiers feared U.S. Marines more than death itself. If you're ready for the brutal truth, subscribe to War Chronicle X now. The first cracks in Japanese confidence. August 7, 1942. Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, a veteran of the China campaign where Japanese forces had seemed unstoppable, scrawled in his diary after the first week of fighting. The Americans who landed here are different from any enemy we've faced. They don't retreat when surrounded. They don't surrender when their position becomes hopeless. Most disturbing, they fight at night as if darkness empowers them rather than frightens them. Guadalcanal was Japan's first defensive battle in the Pacific. The Imperial Japanese Army expected an easy victory over inexperienced American forces. The 1st Marine Division that came ashore numbered just over 16,000 men. Japanese military intelligence had described Marines as elite troops, sure, but still Americans, products of a soft democratic society that valued individual comfort over collective sacrifice. Within days, every single assumption proved catastrophically wrong. Lieutenant Shigeru Fukudome commanded a reinforced company ordered to retake Henderson Field on the night of August 20th. His unit of 200 men had defeated Chinese divisions 3 times their size. They advanced in textbook fashion, confident Americans would panic in darkness. The Marines were waiting in carefully prepared positions with interlocking fields of fire. Fukudome's company walked straight into a killing ground. What happened next violated everything in Japanese tactical doctrine. Rather than fortify and defend, the Marines immediately counterattacked into the darkness using automatic weapons with devastating precision. Fukudome's diary, recovered after his death 3 days later, recorded his shock. They attacked us in the night. We are the ones who attack at night. They moved through jungle we considered impenetrable. They killed in silence, then vanished. By dawn, 90 men remained from my company. The Americans had suffered 12 casualties. The pattern repeated across Guadalcanal, and it was just the beginning. Subscribe to War Chronicle X to discover what happened next. The pattern repeated across Guadalcanal. Japanese forces, accustomed to enemies who crumbled under banzai charges, discovered Marines who held positions until physically overrun, then fought hand-to-hand with bayonets, knives, and fists. Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, who survived 4 months on Guadalcanal before evacuation, wrote in a letter intercepted by American intelligence, "We were taught the Americans are individualistic, that they won't sacrifice for their comrades. This is completely false. I watched a Marine machine gunner continue firing with both legs shattered until Japanese infantry killed him at arm's length. His assistant immediately grabbed the weapon and kept firing. We lost 40 men to that single position. The Marine training that created such soldiers baffled Japanese military analysts. Private Yamamoto, who would later face Marines on Iwo Jima, first learned about them during intelligence briefings in 1943. The instructor, a staff officer who'd interrogated captured Marines, seemed genuinely disturbed. The American Marines undergo training that would be considered criminal abuse in any civilized army. They're broken down mentally and physically, then rebuilt into something that barely resembles the soft civilians who entered. They're taught to view death in combat as honorable, to never surrender, to fight until physically incapable. The officer paused. This sounds familiar, yes? They've copied our Bushido, but they've added something we didn't anticipate: American industrial capacity. The combination proved devastating when courage met industrial warfare. Japanese soldiers trained in Bushido expected death before dishonor, but they fought with equipment increasingly inferior to American weapons. Marines underwent training nearly as harsh as Japanese soldiers endured, creating warriors just as willing to die. But those Marines landed with overwhelming firepower that made Japanese positions untenable. November 20th, 1943. Tarawa Atoll. Rear Admiral Keiji Shibasaki commanded 400 defenders and fortifications considered impregnable. The 2nd Marine Division proved him wrong in 76 hours. Private First Class Tadashi Ogawa, one of only 17 Japanese survivors, told interrogators what he witnessed. The first wave was massacred in the water. We killed hundreds. More craft arrived. The second wave died on the beach. More came. The third wave reached our positions with flamethrowers. They didn't stop until we were dead, or they were. The mathematics were brutal. Nearly 6,400 men died on Tarawa in 76 hours. The Marines who survived had demonstrated they'd take any objective, regardless of cost. This was just a preview of what was coming. Want to understand the psychology behind this relentless warfare? Subscribe to War Chronicles. Documents captured on Saipan in 1944 revealed Japanese intelligence reports describing Marines as shock troops displaying fanatical devotion to objectives. Marines refuse orders to retreat and will counterattack even when tactically disadvantaged. Casualties inflicted on Marines do not degrade unit effectiveness until the unit is completely destroyed. This assessment emerged from systematic study. Captain Yoshio Kobayashi, who survived Guadalcanal, provided detailed comparisons. American Army infantry tactics are sound and conventional. The Marines operate differently. They advance aggressively regardless of casualties. They accept casualty rates that would cause any rational commander to halt. This is unprecedented. The speed of Marine operations proved as devastating as their firepower. Lieutenant Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, who commanded on Peleliu, planned defenses based on previous campaigns where American forces paused after landings. The Marines never paused. They landed September 15th at 8:30 a.m. and controlled half the airfield by nightfall. Nakagawa's diary recorded his shock. My defensive plan collapsed because it assumed the enemy would act rationally. The Marines do not act rationally. They act with total commitment regardless of circumstances. The doctrine of acceptable casualties. This total commitment manifested in ways that seemed suicidal to Japanese observers, but proved devastatingly effective. Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, captured on Bougainville, described watching a Marine platoon assault a fortified hilltop position. The approach was across open ground swept by machine gun fire from 3 bunkers. Japanese doctrine would have required extensive artillery preparation followed by infantry assault under smoke cover. The Marine lieutenant assessed the position for perhaps 30 seconds, then ordered the assault with no preparation. The platoon charged directly into the fire. 7 men fell in the first 20 seconds. The survivors reached the first bunker and destroyed it with grenades. 3 more men fell assault in the second bunker. The remaining Marines took it. The third bunker fell to the last 5 men standing. The platoon suffered 12 casualties from 37 men to take a position we considered impregnable. The entire action took 4 minutes from order to completion. This wasn't courage. This was systematic application of acceptable casualties to achieve objectives faster than we could respond. The concept of acceptable casualties horrified Japanese officers trained to value their soldiers' lives within the context of achieving objectives. Marines calculated casualties as the cost of victory and paid that cost without hesitation when the objective warranted it. This created a psychological advantage beyond material superiority. Japanese commanders, knowing Marines would accept 50% casualties to take a position, faced impossible decisions. Defend with insufficient force and lose the position. Defend with adequate force but weaken other positions. Abandon the position and cede terrain. Every option led to defeat. The only variable was timing. The mathematics of war had changed forever. Subscribe to War Chronicle X to see how this strategy reshaped the Pacific War. Major Yoshiharu Takamori, senior staff officer on Iwo Jima who survived the battle, analyzed this dilemma in post-war interrogations. General Kuribayashi understood we couldn't stop the Marines. Our defenses were designed to delay them and inflict maximum casualties. We succeeded brilliantly at inflicting casualties. Over 26,000 Marines were killed or wounded in 36 days. This would have destroyed any other military force's ability to continue offensive operations. The Marines reinforced and continued attacking without any reduction in intensity. We calculated that inflicting 10,000 casualties would halt their advance for at least a week. They suffered 10,000 casualties in the first week, and their advance never slowed. This revealed the fundamental imbalance. The Marines could replace casualties faster than Japan could. The Americans had 50 Marine divisions in the Pacific Theater, or training in the United States. Japan had finite defenders on each island. Mathematics dictated defeat. The logistics of total war. The mathematics extended beyond simple manpower. Marines landed with logistical support that enabled sustained operations at intensities Japanese forces couldn't match. Second Lieutenant Toshio Yamamoto, captured on Saipan, witnessed the contrast firsthand during a nighttime infiltration. I led a patrol to observe American positions 3 days after their landing. We expected to find exhausted troops with limited supplies, as Japanese forces would have been after 3 days of intense combat on a contested beachhead. Instead, we found Marines eating hot food, receiving ammunition resupply by truck, medical tents treating wounded, and rest areas where units rotated off the line. Their supply dumps contained more ammunition than my entire regiment possessed. They had mobile kitchens preparing fresh meals. They had portable showers and laundry facilities. They were fighting the most intense battle of the Pacific War and living better than we did in garrison. This demonstrated that defeating them was impossible. They would never run out of food, ammunition, medicine, or replacements. We would. The relentless American logistics created a form of attrition warfare that favored Marines despite higher initial casualties. Japanese defenders fought from fixed positions with limited supplies and no reinforcement. Every casualty was permanent. Every round of ammunition expended couldn't be replaced. Marines fought from an expanding beachhead with supplies arriving daily by ship and air. Casualties were evacuated and replaced. Ammunition was unlimited. The longer a battle lasted, the weaker Japanese defenders became while Marines grew stronger. This wasn't just superior firepower. It was industrial warfare perfected. Subscribe to War Chronicle X to understand how America weaponized its economy. The breaking point. By mid-1944, the unsustainability became clear to Japanese military leadership. Intelligence summaries distributed to garrison commanders acknowledged that Marines couldn't be stopped, only delayed. One document, captured on Tinian, provided guidance that revealed complete abandonment of any hope for victory. When defending against Marine assault, do not expect to hold positions indefinitely. The objective is to delay the American advance sufficiently to enable other strategic objectives. Each day of resistance is valuable. Each Marine killed or wounded is valuable. But understand that the position will fall. Prepare accordingly. Stock positions with maximum ammunition. Create redundant defensive positions. Plan to fall back in stages. Accept that you will likely die in the defense. Your sacrifice buys time for the Empire. There is honor in this sacrifice, even without victory. This grim calculus defined Japanese defensive strategy for the final year of the Pacific War. Defenders no longer fought to win battles. They fought to make those battles so costly that Americans might negotiate rather than invade Japan itself. Marines, by accepting casualties that would have forced other armies to halt, negated this strategy entirely. They paid the price demanded and continued advancing. No cost was too high. No position was too strong. The offensive never stopped. Private Tadashi Ogawa, one of the few survivors from Tarawa, later described the psychological impact of facing such an enemy. After the first day of battle, we knew we'd lose. The Marines had landed in overwhelming force. They had naval gunfire that destroyed our positions. They had air support that bombed us continuously. But we still believed we could make them pay such a terrible price they'd reconsider future invasions. Then we watched them continue attacking despite horrific casualties. They walked through machine gun fire that killed dozens. More Marines came behind them. We killed them too. More came. We fought for 3 days with absolute commitment. We inflicted thousands of casualties. We died almost to the last man, and the Marines took Tarawa on schedule. They paid the price we demanded and continued their advance across the Pacific. That was when we understood the war was lost. An enemy who will pay any price to win cannot be defeated by making victory expensive. This realization spread through the Japanese military like wildfire. Subscribe to War Chronicle X to discover what happened when Japan's best commander tried to stop them. Kuribayashi's last stand, General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, arguably the most capable defensive commander Japan fielded in the Pacific, spent months studying Marine tactics and creating defenses specifically designed to defeat them on Iwo Jima. His preparations were extraordinary. He banned the banzai charges that had wasted Japanese lives in previous battles. He created a defense in depth that channeled Marines into killing zones covered by multiple bunkers. He positioned artillery to deliver devastating fire on landing beaches. He built 11 miles of tunnels connecting 1,500 cave positions, Every approach was registered for mortar and artillery fire. The beach was a death trap. 3 Marine divisions, 70,000 men, landed on Iwo Jima on February 19th. Kuribayashi's defenses worked exactly as planned. Naval bombardment barely scratched the fortifications. Marines landed in neat waves and immediately took catastrophic casualties. Within minutes, the black volcanic sand was covered with dead and wounded. Japanese artillery observers called down perfectly coordinated fire. The assault seemed to be failing. Then something happened that Kuribayashi hadn't anticipated, though he should have from previous battles. The Marines didn't withdraw to regroup. They advanced into the artillery fire. They found gaps between Japanese positions and exploited them. When bunkers stopped the advance, demolition teams crawled forward under fire to destroy them. When those teams died, other Marines took their place. The attack never stopped. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto watched from his bunker as Marines assaulted the position to his right. His diary records the incomprehension Japanese defenders felt. A Marine flamethrower team approached the bunker. We killed the operator. His assistant picked up the weapon and continued. We killed him. A 3rd Marine took the weapon. We wounded him severely. He continued firing until the weapon was empty, then threw grenades into the firing ports until we killed him. By then, demolition engineers had reached the bunker entrance. The position was lost. This happened 30 times in the first hour. How do you defeat men who will not stop? The answer, as Japanese defenders discovered, was that you couldn't. The brutal arithmetic of Iwo Jima demonstrated Marine doctrine in its purest form. Subscribe to War Chronicle X to see the full picture. The final assessment, the brutal arithmetic of Iwo Jima demonstrated Marine doctrine in its purest form. 70,000 Marines landed. 26,000 became casualties, including nearly 7,000 killed. But all 21,000 Japanese defenders died except for 1,083 who were captured, most because they were unconscious or too wounded to resist. The Marines paid an almost unimaginable price, but they took every objective. Kuribayashi himself, who survived until late March 1945, wrote his final assessment in a message smuggled to Tokyo before the position collapsed. The Marines are the most effective fighting force I have encountered. They possess several attributes that make them uniquely dangerous. First, their training creates soldiers willing to accept casualties that would break other units. Second, their firepower exceeds ours by a factor of 5 to 1 in artillery and 10 to 1 in air support. Third, their junior leaders make decisions at squad level that our officers make at company level, allowing them to exploit opportunities faster than we can react. Fourth, and most critical, they never stop attacking. There's no defense that can survive this combination indefinitely. This final point terrified Japanese defenders across the Pacific. Soldiers could accept defeat in battle. They could understand being outgunned or outmaneuvered. What they couldn't comprehend was an enemy that simply would not stop, regardless of losses. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, who fought on 3 islands before his capture on Okinawa, explained in a post-war interview, "You must understand the difference between Marines and other American forces. Army units would attack, take casualties, and pull back to reorganize. This is sensible military doctrine. Marines would attack, take casualties, and continue attacking over the bodies of their own dead. This isn't military doctrine. This is something else entirely." What made Marines so different? The answer lies in their training. Subscribe to War Chronicle X to discover the transformation process that created these warriors. brothers in arms. The quality that made Marines so feared was deliberately created through training that broke recruits down to nothing, then rebuilt them into warriors whose identity was inseparable from the Corps itself. Documents captured on Saipan included interrogation reports of a Marine prisoner who explained the transformation to bewildered Japanese intelligence officers. Boot camp lasts 8 weeks. For the first 4 weeks, drill instructors destroy everything civilian in the recruit. You're told you're worthless, that you'll never be a Marine, that you should quit and join the Army. The abuse is psychological and physical. You're pushed until you think you can't continue, then pushed further. Those who quit are publicly shamed. Those who remain learn that surrender is not an option. The interrogation report noted the Japanese officer's response. This resembles our own training, but more systematic. However, the Marine prisoner then described something that had no parallel in Japanese military training. The second 4 weeks, the instructors build you into a Marine. You learn that you're part of something greater than yourself, that every Marine who ever lived is your brother. This created something unique. Marines fought because to fail was to betray every Marine who had ever lived. The psychological pressure created fighters who would advance when rational calculation said to stop. The weapon they feared most. The most feared Marine weapon wasn't rifles or artillery, it was the flamethrower. Japanese soldiers, trained to die honorably in combat, discovered that flamethrowers offered no honorable death. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, captured on Okinawa with burns covering 40% of his body, described the psychological impact. We were taught to accept death in battle as glorious. Death by bullets, bayonets, artillery, these are warriors' deaths. Fire is something different. You watch flames approach your position, you smell comrades burning alive, you hear the screaming. There is no glory in this death. It is industrial slaughter. This is what the Marines understood that we didn't. Modern war has no place for glory. It's about killing the enemy as efficiently as possible using the best tools available. The truth Japanese soldiers learned came too late. Subscribe to War Chronicle X for more untold stories from the Pacific War. The truth they died knowing. By 1944, every Japanese soldier in the Pacific knew that facing Marines meant facing the most lethal combination of training, equipment, and doctrine the Americans possessed. One document captured on Tinian in July 1944 provided detailed guidance that revealed how thoroughly Japanese confidence had collapsed. When facing Marines, do not expect them to retreat. Do not assume casualties will degrade their morale. Do not believe superiority in numbers provides an advantage, as their firepower negates numerical superiority. Do not attempt banzai charges unless no other option exists, as Marines will slaughter charging troops with automatic weapons and artillery. Do not expect them to fear nighttime attacks, as they fight effectively in darkness. The only effective defense is prepared positions protected by interlocking fields of fire with multiple fallback positions prepared in advance, and with the understanding that the position will eventually fall. The goal is not to stop the Marines, but to exact maximum casualties before the position is overrun. General Kuribayashi, preparing Iwo Jima's defenses in early 1945, understood this perfectly. He wrote to his wife in January, 1 month before the invasion. I am asked to defend Iwo Jima against American Marines. This is a mathematical problem with only one solution. The Marines will land with 70,000 men. They will have complete control of sea and air. They will bring unlimited ammunition and supplies. They will attack until Iwo Jima falls. My mission is not to defeat them. That is impossible. My mission is to make them pay such a terrible price that the Americans will reconsider invading the home islands. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto, who survived until March 10th before dying in his bunker, wrote his final diary entry the night before. Tomorrow, the Marines will reach this position. We have killed hundreds of them in the past 3 weeks. More arrive every day. They do not weaken. They do not slow down. They do not stop. I thought our spirit was stronger than American materialism. I was wrong. The Marines have both spirit and material. They have courage equal to ours combined with weapons and supplies we cannot match. They are what we claim to be. We are what we claimed they were. This is a truth we die knowing. His bunker was destroyed the next morning by a Marine demolition team after a 6-hour battle. The position delayed the Marine advance by exactly 40 minutes. This is the story they don't teach in history books. Subscribe to War Chronicle X to discover more forgotten truths from WOA. The final statistics. The campaign ended on March 26th. The final statistics told the story of what happened when Marines fought the best defenses Japan could create. 21,000 Japanese defenders died, 1,083 surrendered, most because they were unconscious or physically incapable of resistance. The Marines suffered 26,000 casualties from 70,000 men committed, nearly 40% casualties. Any other military force would have required months to recover. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions were back in action within 6 weeks. This ability to absorb casualties and continue fighting became the defining characteristic that most terrified Japanese defenders. Corporal Kenji Matsumoto, imprisoned in Hawaii after his capture, explained in a 1946 interview what Japanese soldiers felt facing Marines. The worst part was knowing they would never stop. You could kill half a Marine unit, and the survivors would continue attacking. You could wound their leaders, and sergeants would take command. You could fight them to exhaustion, and they would attack again the next day. There was no way to win. You could only kill them until they killed you. That is not war. That is mutual annihilation. And the Marines had more men than we did. The lesson learned too late. After the war ended and propaganda dissolved, Japanese veterans acknowledged the truth their leaders had hidden. Private First Class Teiji Yoshida, repatriated in 1946 after recovering from wounds received on Saipan, described his return home. Everything we were told was lies. The Marines did not torture prisoners. They provided food, medical care, shelter. They treated us better than our own officers had. The Americans were not barbarians. We were the barbarians. This knowledge destroyed what remained of our faith in the empire. The most comprehensive assessment came from General Kuribayashi's final message from Iwo Jima, delivered through desperate radio transmission on March 21st, 5 days before the island fell. I have fought the Marines for 31 days. They are the finest soldiers I have encountered. Their training is superior. Their equipment is overwhelming. Their courage equals ours, and their numbers are endless. Japan cannot defeat such an enemy. We can only die fighting them and hope that our sacrifice buys time for peace negotiations that preserve something of our nation. To my fellow officers preparing to defend the home islands, know this: the Marines will come. You cannot stop them. You can only make them pay in blood for every meter of ground. Perhaps, if the price is high enough, they will negotiate rather than destroy everything. That is our only hope. That hope died with the atomic bombs in August. This is the brutal truth of the Pacific War. Subscribe to War Chronicle X now for more stories that changed history. The Legacy Marines fought in every major Pacific campaign from Guadalcanal in August 1942 to Okinawa in June 1945. They suffered 86,000 casualties, including 19,500 killed. But they never failed to take an objective, never abandoned a position once captured, never gave Japanese forces reason to believe Marines could be defeated through superior tactics or fighting spirit. The price was terrible. The results were absolute. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, interviewed in 1975 as an old man, summarized what his generation learned fighting Marines. We were taught that spirit conquers material, that our will to die made us invincible. The Marines taught us that spirit plus material conquers spirit alone. They were as willing to die as we were, but they had Sherman tanks and naval gunfire and unlimited ammunition and air supremacy and medical care and food and all the resources of America behind them. We had our rifles and our courage and promises of victory. That was not enough. It was never going to be enough. The Marines proved that on every island they took. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto's final diary entry, written hours before his death in a bunker on Iwo Jima, captured this knowledge. The Marines will win, not because they're braver than we are, not because they want victory more than we do. They will win because their nation gives them everything they need to win, and they will use those resources without mercy until we are all dead. This is the truth our leaders should have told us. We are samurai, fighting with swords against men with machine guns who also have the spirit of samurai. There was never any hope. There was only death. His bunker fell the next day. Join the War Chronicle X community. If this story revealed something you never knew about the Pacific War, hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories that deserve to be remembered. Subscribe to War Chronicle X to discover the untold histories that shaped our world. From the brutal realities of combat to the strategic decisions that changed everything, we bring you the stories textbooks leave out. Drop a comment below and tell us, where are you watching from? What other Pacific War stories do you want to hear? Our community spans from veterans to history students, from Tokyo to Texas. You're part of something special here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering those who fought. Remember, history isn't just about who won or lost, it's about understanding why. Subscribe to War Chronicle X now and never miss another story that matters.